It's that time of the month again, guys, where we have the information for the next evolution. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys the stats, some gameplay clips, and then eventually a full game so you guys can see the Evolved Valkyrie in action. So it's going to be coming out beginning of January. It's actually the first rare evolution because up until this point, we've only gotten commons, so this is going to be quite interesting. It's a 2-cycle evolution, which is probably what you would expect, and the ability is Spin Wind Damage, where it essentially spawns mini tornadoes every single time she swings. It deals 76 damage, so this is overall a plus 28% damage per second increase, which is pretty significant. And every time she swings, spawning those mini tornadoes, it pulls enemies towards her. And now, guys, let's quickly compare the stats of the regular Valkyrie to the Evolved Valkyrie. So what you're firstly going to notice is the damage it deals is the exact same. The Evolved Valk also has the same amount of hit points and has the same hit speed. So it's kind of like the Evolved Ice Spirit, where there's no buff to the actual stats of the card. It's just the ability added in. The tornado radius is 5.5, and the duration of the tornado is half a second. And like I already mentioned before, it deals 76 damage. Alright guys, now let's take a look at it in action against some interactions, and like I said, I'll show you guys a full game too. But as you can see, amazing against things like the Hog Rider, doesn't even get a single shot, and then something like an E-Giant too, you would think, well, surely the E-Giant is still gonna be able to get through. Well, think again. It just keeps getting tornadoed back over and over. Yeah, this looks pretty broken, I'm not gonna lie. You can also use it to get your King Tower activated against things like the Mega Knight you see here, and it's of course going to be amazing against swarmies like the Royal Hogs, a very solid counter to those. Now, your enemy though can use the tornado against the Evo Valk and use it to their advantage, like you saw with the tornado there, and then the Valkyrie pulled the Giant Skelly right to the tower. Also, it is able to hit air. So as you see, its ability, the tornado is hitting air just like the regular tornado does. So this to me looks absolutely busted and might be the best Evo, but I guess we'll see. Alright guys, now let's check out the Evolved Valkyrie in a full match here. So one of the decks is going to be Hog X NATO, which the Evolved Valkyrie likely is going to pair very well in, and then it's against Electro Giant here. So two completely different type of decks, so you guys can see how well it does inside of a beatdown type of deck, and then kind of how it does inside of more of a cycle control type of deck, because I think it's going to tend to do a little bit better inside of cycle decks, especially because it is a 2-cycle evolution, and oftentimes in heavier decks we see stuff like the Evolved Barbs that are a 1-cycle evolution. That is just my prediction. So Hog comes in here, gets some damage. Obviously we have not seen the Evolved Valkyrie yet because it does need those 2 cycles, and we'll see how much of a difference the Evolved Valkyrie truly makes compared to the regular one, because like I said, there's no stat increases, so no extra hit points, no extra damage, but I think the ability alone is already going to make it so much better. So kind of a messed up King Tower activation over there. The E-Giant is coming in, so this is the final regular Valkyrie for now. The next one is of course going to be Evolved, and I feel like the Evolved Valkyrie is also going to pair very well inside of decks that already have the tornado too, so you kind of get like a double tornado combination, which is really interesting. I will say, guys, Evolved Valkyrie might not be as good as you think it is inside of decks such as Graveyard because of how easy it is to activate the King Tower off of the Evolved Valkyrie with things like the Fishermen, and even if you play things like the Goblins and Skeletons. Anyway, you see the Evolved Valk here, it's dealing extra DPS to the Guardian, but it's nothing substantial. You can see in some situations its ability isn't going to get you an insane amount of value besides just that small amount of DPS. So I think it's going to be very situation based, and I think it's going to especially be good to pair things with it. Like for example, if you're using it in a Hog deck, it's probably very beneficial to pair it with the Hog, because what could happen is if the Hog separates from the Valk, and if the Valk hits something, it could pull something away from the Hog, that sort of thing. Also, if you get the Evolved Valkyrie, of course, next to the tower, it's going to deal chip damage as well. So those are going to be ways where it's going to be incredibly useful. So if you're going in, say, for a Hog Evo Valk push, it's going to be really obnoxious for the opponent to deal with, because then you don't want to take that extra chip damage from the Evolved Valk, you know, on your tower, and then you have to deal with the Hog on top of that. So it's just going to be things along those lines that just make it, I feel like, a very strong evolution. But so far in this match, it hasn't been anything like super crazy yet. I mean, with the E-Giant, it did help out a bit. It pulled the Executioner in, which was very helpful. Just small things like that are going to really change the tide of matches. And the Lightning comes in, so that was a very aggressive Lightning. And then Hog comes in, and now we see it paired with the Evo Valk. It does end up staying in front. So as you can see, when it does swing, it's dealing damage to that cannon. And I believe if it weren't for that extra DPS, that Hog might have not been able to take it out in one shot. So it's just small things like that you're really going to notice are going to just have, interaction changes, and it's just going to make things a little bit different. I mean, it's definitely going to make games a whole lot more chaotic. I also think it's going to be very interesting when you're playing against a balloon deck and you have the Evo Valk down, because imagine if you play your Evo Valk on defense against a ground card, maybe the Barbarians or the Miner, you could end up pulling the balloon directly on your tower by mistake. So it's actually kind of a strategic evolution when you think about it like that, where there's ways it can actually hurt you, like you saw with the Giant Skeleton Bomb too. But anyway, as you can see, the times where you're really not going to notice anything is where you use the regular Valkyrie and it's kind of doing just as well sometimes on defense, just because it does the same damage and health. But yeah, that's interesting to see it, pull back the Phoenix like that too, and it doesn't do enough damage to take out the egg, so that's something to keep in mind. It's going to need 2-3 swings to actually be able to take out the Phoenix egg, but that's something where it could be pretty useful, where if you need to play the Valk... Oh, look at that! See what I'm saying? The chip damage... Wait, was that chip damage on the tower? I couldn't tell. I thought it was splashing the tower, but it might have been barely out of range. I wasn't paying attention, but... Anyway, that is looking like it's probably going to be game. I think the E-Giant player won here. To be fair, it's a pretty good matchup for E-Giant, so that's kind of what I expected. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I personally think this is a pretty deserved evolution to the Valkyrie, because if you pull up the top 200, there is literally only 2 people using the Valkyrie inside of the top 200, meaning it is not good at all. And a large reason why is because of the Evolved Knight. So what I want to do now is quickly show you guys the Evolved Knight, where if we include the Evolved Knight in the top 200, there are 72 people running the Evolved Knight in the top 200. And in my opinion, the Valkyrie evolution is going to help diversify things a little bit, because obviously you can't have 2 evolutions in the same deck. So this means if the Evolved Valk is pretty decent, people are going to use her instead of the Evolved Knight, which I ultimately think is a pretty good thing. And now, guys, I want to end the video showing you guys an animation that Clash Royale made of the Evolved Valkyrie. They tweeted out tornado plus axe equals fire. This animation, guys, I'm telling you, was awesome. Everyone loved it. Everyone in the comments was like, it's a sick animation. And I've said this before, one of the best things about Clash Royale is probably their art and animation team. It's always on point, and I feel like always helps, hype things up, like we saw with the champions and every single evolution as well. So it's kind of like a anime style teaser. So pretty cool, I'd say.